The situation rapidly deteriorated when Zoe Stryker, humanity's most unlikely representative, inadvertently damaged a galactic diplomacy console. Her offense? Leaning on it with an open soda can. "I wasn't even trying," she exclaimed, as the assembled galactic representative stared at her as if she'd just repealed the laws of physics. The soda fizzed menacingly, and the assembly hall erupted into pandemonium. 12 different alien species, each more vibrant and appendage-laden than the last, gestured wildly and argued in a cacophony of at least 7 mutually unintelligible languages. An emergency meeting was immediately convened to address the human problem, as it was delicately phrased in official documentation. Truth be told, Zoe wasn't meant to be there at all. Just 36 hours prior, she was on Earth attempting to repair her microwave with a fork, when a sudden power surge teleported her directly into the heart of this intergalactic diplomatic incident. She was still dressed in pajama pants adorned with a coffee stain resembling a despondent cephalopod. The Galactic Assembly, unsurprisingly, had little tolerance for such unforeseen circumstances. "This cannot be our representative," fumed Elder Cronast, a lime-green alien whose head bore a striking resemblance to a deflated basketball. "Humans can barely manage their own planet, can they?" Zoe, loudly crunching on a granola bar she'd somehow smuggled into the snack-prohibited facility, grinned. "Oh, don't you worry," she reassured him, "I'm not even proficient at surviving my own house. I once fell into a laundry basket and couldn't get out for 3 hours. So if you're anticipating a heroic figure, you might want to adjust your expectations." This did little to soothe the assembly. The heart of the matter, of course, was Grunnak the Indomitable, a warlord whose very name evoked the same hushed dread as terms like root canal or airline baggage fees. Grunnak had conquered 9 star systems, vanquished entire fleets, and once, with a single punch, caused a moon to develop a permanent wobble. Now, as fate would have it, he had declared war on the Galactic Assembly. The reasons remained shrouded in mystery. Perhaps his favorite headwear had gone missing, perhaps he was simply bored. Regardless, they needed someone to stop him, and quickly. The Assembly had spent weeks evaluating the galaxy's most skilled warriors. They'd scrutinized holographic recordings of epic battles, intricate simulations, and resumes so impressive they brought tears to the eyes of onlookers. When no suitable candidate emerged, they reluctantly turned to the humans. Earth had one military envoy available, Captain Garrick Vindel, a legendary strategist, expert in 16 forms of combat and the proud owner of a mustache capable of intimidating most life forms. Unfortunately, Vindel was currently stuck in diplomatic quarantine due to an incident involving space hamsters. This left Zoe as the only option. "This is an embarrassment," bellowed Commander Splat, a gelatinous being who communicated through vibrations, resembling a sentient, quivering jello mold. "She has absolutely no qualifications." Zoe, never one to back down, raised a hand. "Hey now," she protested, "I'm quite qualified. I won a pie-eating contest once, repaired a broken sink with duct tape and a spork, and I can recite the lyrics to every 80s power ballad. Oh, and I can burp the alphabet." Commander Splat vibrated with what could only be interpreted as horror. The assembly deliberated for hours, but their choices were slim: deploy Zoe, who had a statistically insignificant 0.004% chance of survival according to their simulations, or wait for Grunnak to obliterate half the galaxy. Reluctantly, they agreed to provide Zoe a crash course in intergalactic diplomacy, which she promptly ignored, finding it mostly standing around and looking bored. By the time she was officially deployed, Zoe's arsenal consisted of a multipurpose galactic translator, which she immediately used to prank call the assembly, and an emergency survival kit, which she mistook for a snack box. The aliens observed her departure with somber expressions. "Do you believe she stands any chance at all?" Cronast inquired anxiously. "No," Commander Splat vibrated pessimistically, "but at the very least, it will be entertaining." Zoe's training, if it could even be called that, commenced with an overly eager alien instructor named Fleer. Fleer's species possessed 3 brains specifically evolved for processing complex combat strategies. Unfortunately, none of these brains were equipped to handle the enigma that was Zoe. "Your opponent," Fleer began, projecting a hologram of Grunnak, is 2.8 meters tall, weighs 400 kilograms, and possesses claws that can slice through reinforced uranium. Cool, cool, Zoe responded absently, doodling a mustache on Grunak's holographic image. So, what's his weakness? Knees? Ears? Inflated ego? Fleer blinked all 6 of his eyes. He has no weakness, he stated flatly. That's precisely why he's called the Indomitable. His battle record is flawless. Well, technically Zoe countered, pointing to her doodle, he just lost his dignity. Fleer's desperation to instill some semblance of combat prowess in Zoe only intensified. He meticulously laid out a plan for Grunak's defeat, detailing precision strikes, synchronized movements, and the intricate mechanics of gravitational combat. Zoe, however, was more concerned with the availability of refreshments during the impending battle. This trend continued, with increasingly comical results. When introduced to Gravia Kata, a graceful galactic martial art involving weight shifts and pressure points, Zoe promptly tripped over her own shoelaces and demolished the holographic demonstration equipment. That was innovative, Fleer stammered, his 3 brains clearly overloaded trying to comprehend her existence. Next came weaponry. A plasma lance, sleek and deadly, capable of disintegrating foes with a single blast, was presented to Zoe. She promptly used it to toast a marshmallow. "You're not taking this seriously," Fleer finally exclaimed, his gelatinous form vibrating with exasperation. "I am very serious," Zoe countered, happily munching on the roasted confection. "This is delicious." Word of Zoe's unconventional training method spread like wildfire. By the 3rd day, she'd earned the moniker the Human Error among the Assembly's military personnel. Wagers were placed on her survival time against Grunak, the most optimistic bet gave her 5 minutes. Yet amidst the pervasive mockery, something unexpected occurred. During a particularly chaotic training exercise, Zoe faced an advanced combat droid program to anticipate every possible move. Zoe, naturally, did the unpredictable. She tripped, collided with the droid, and inadvertently triggered its self-destruct sequence. As the smoke cleared, Zoe stood triumphant, albeit slightly singed. "See? Piece of cake," she declared, brushing off her pajama pants. Fleer stared at the droid's remains, dumbfounded. How did you do that?" "I improvised," Zoe replied with a grin. Zoe's unconventional triumph sparked a wave of bewildered amusement. While undeniably unskilled, she possessed a peculiar knack for disrupting expectations. Her irreverent attitude, coupled with a complete disregard for protocol, perplexed the galaxy's brightest minds. This unusual characteristic, however, started to garner a strange respect from some unexpected quarters. CLLE, a reptilian alien with scales resembling polished obsidian and a perpetually grumpy disposition, approached Zoe during a meal break. "You think all of this is some kind of joke, don't you?" he hissed, gesturing accusingly at her tray of vibrant alien food cubes. "Nope," Zoe responded, popping a cube into her mouth. "I think it's a tragedy wrapped in a farce, deep-fried in absurdity, and served with a side of utter bewilderment. Want some?" CLLE scales shifted to a deep purple, a telltale sign of intense annoyance, yet he chose not to press the issue. As Zoe's training neared its conclusion, the Galactic Assembly convened to assess her progress. Opinions were sharply divided. She lacks discipline, Fleer complained, focus, and any semblance of respect for established procedures. KYTH, an amphibian diplomat who had developed a peculiar fondness for Zoe's antics, countered, "But she's resourceful, unpredictable. Those qualities could prove advantageous." Cronast, the lime-green elder, folded his arms. "She's not an asset, she's a liability, with snacks." The final decision was reached: Zoe would confront Grunak, armed with whatever bizarre strategies her chaotic mind could conjure. At the very least, the Assembly reasoned, she might confuse the Warlord long enough for a viable plan to emerge. As Zoe prepared for her mission, Fleer handed her a communicator. "Try not to perish immediately," he advised. "Oh, you do care," Zoe replied, patting his head affectionately. Zoe's arrival at Grunak's fortress was anything but discreet. The stealth shuttle, designed for silent entry, emitted a cheerful chime as it docked, a feature mistakenly added by an overly optimistic engineer. The fortress itself was a menacing structure of twisted spires and pulsating red lights, an architectural embodiment of impending doom. However, the most daunting element was the reception desk at the entrance. Zoe approached the receptionist, a grey-skinned alien with 5 eyes and an aura of profound apathy. His nameplate read Galactic Warlord Concierge. "I'm here to see Grunak," Zoe announced brightly. Jarrell arched a single unimpressed eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment?" "Not exactly," Zoe admitted, rummaging through her backpack. "But I do have half a bag of gummy worms and a serious attitude problem." "Does that count?" Jarrell sighed, the kind of sigh that spoke of countless similar encounters. "Take the elevator to the top floor," he instructed, "and try not to break anything." The elevator ride was an experience in itself. Calming elevator music played, yet the buttons were labeled with ominous phrases like doom, despair, and stairs to nowhere. Naturally, Zoe pressed every single one. The doors finally opened, revealing what could only be described as a supervillain's Pinterest board brought to life. Grunak's throne room was a spectacle of lava pits, dramatic lighting, and a throne that resembled a weaponized armchair. The warlord himself stood at the center, a towering figure in spiked armor that shimmered like a disco ball designed for murder. Grunak, a towering figure encased in spiked armor that shimmered menacingly, addressed Zoe with a booming voice that echoed throughout the cavernous throne room. "You? Who dares enter my domain?" Zoe, unfazed by the warlord's imposing presence, simply raised a hand in greeting. "Hi, I'm Zoe. And I'm here to, well, let's just say I'm here to complicate your plans." For a moment, a stunned silence hung in the air, broken only by the bubbling of the lava pits that dotted the throne room floor. Then, Grunak erupted in laughter, a deep, rumbling sound that shook the very foundations of the fortress. "You," he bellowed, pointing a clawed finger at Zoe. "You are the champion they send to defeat me? This is an insult." Zoe shrugged, unperturbed. "Yeah, I get that a lot. But hey, I figured you'd appreciate the comic relief, right?" Grunak sneered, flexing his massive claws. "I have crushed warriors from 100 worlds. What makes you think you stand a chance?" "Two things," Zoe replied, pulling a slightly squashed granola bar from her pocket. "One, I've got snacks. 2, I'm way less predictable than your usual opponent." Grunak's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Gladly," Zoe said, stepping forward. "Most people fight you because they've got something to prove. Honor, glory, revenge, that sort of thing. Me? I don't have any of that. I'm just here because someone told me it'd be funny." This unexpected explanation seemed to throw Grunak off balance. He was used to facing opponents fueled by rage and a thirst for battle, not someone motivated by sheer amusement. "Enough talk," he roared, lunging at Zoe with terrifying speed. Zoe barely managed to dodge the attack, tumbling awkwardly into a nearby pillar. "Whoa," she quipped, scrambling to her feet. "You've got some serious morning breath." The battle between Zoe and Grunak escalated into a chaotic ballet of improbable dodges and even more improbable counterattacks. Grunak, accustomed to crushing opponents with brute force, found himself increasingly frustrated by Zoe's erratic movements. His powerful blows missed their mark, striking pillars, decorative tapestries, and even a rather unfortunate vending machine that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Zoe, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving in the chaos. She wielded a broken chair leg like a seasoned gladiator, deflecting Grunak's attacks with an almost comical grace. At one point, she even managed to distract the warlord by throwing a handful of trail mix at his face, momentarily blinding him with a mixture of dried fruit and nuts. "You're infuriating," Grunak roared, wiping the debris from his eyes. "Thanks," Zoe chirped, narrowly avoiding a swipe that took out an entire column. "I get that a lot." By the time reinforcements from the Galactic Assembly arrived, Grunak's throne room resembled a disaster zone, and the warlord himself lay sprawled on the floor, defeated not by superior strength or strategy, but by a combination of sheer luck, unyielding tenacity, and a seemingly endless supply of snacks. Zoe, perched triumphantly on Grunak's collapsed form, waved lazily at the arriving officers. "Took you long enough," she called out, holding the broken chair leg aloft like a trophy. "I was starting to think I'd have to redecorate this whole place myself." The officers stared in stunned disbelief. How had this human, armed with nothing but a broken piece of furniture and an apparently bottomless backpack of provisions, managed to subdue the galaxy's most feared warlord? How did you do this?" one officer finally stammered, his voice laced with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. Zoe simply shrugged. "Like I said, snacks and an attitude problem," she replied, before popping a handful of popcorn into her mouth. The stunned officers could only exchange confused glances as they cautiously approached the scene. Captain Vore, a stern insectoid with clicking mandibles, finally broke the silence. "You mean to tell us you defeated the most feared warlord in the galaxy, alone?" "Technically," Zoe corrected, holding up a finger, "I had help." She gestured to the debris scattered across the room, the shattered vending machine, the remnants of a candelabra, and a significant amount of what looked suspiciously like spilled trail mix. "Help?" Vore repeated, his antennae twitching in disbelief. "This is impossible. Grunak has toppled entire armies. His claws can cut through starship hulls. His roar alone can disorient an entire battalion." Zoe shrugged again. "Yeah, well, turns out he's also not so great at dodging flying packets of trail mix." The bewildered officers struggled to comprehend the situation as Grunak groaned and stirred beneath Zoe's feet. "Don't worry," Zoe reassured them, noticing their apprehension. "He's just taking a nap. Really intense cardio tends to do that." Grunak, blinking groggily, fixed his glowing red eyes on Zoe. You are not a warrior." "Duh," Zoe responded, gesturing at her pajama pants. "What gave it away? The lack of armor? Or the fact that I'm literally snacking mid-fight?" She punctuated her statement by offering Grunak a gummy worm, which he surprisingly accepted. Transporting Grunak proved to be a challenge, as the warlord, much to everyone's surprise, refused to cooperate with any of the standard containment procedures. Zoe's suggestion of placing him in a cargo hold with a beanbag chair and a generous supply of ice cream was, to her amusement, readily accepted. During the journey, Grunak alternated between sullen silence and attempts to intimidate Zoe, who had by then made herself quite comfortable in the cargo bay, raiding the ship's snack stores and teaching the disgruntled warlord how to play Go Fish. "You have no aces," Zoe declared, pointing at the cards awkwardly clutched in Grunak's massive claws. Grunak grumbled, handed over a card, and muttered, "This game is stupid." "Yeah, well," Zoe countered, "so is trying to conquer the galaxy because someone stole your hat, but here we are." By the time they reached the Assembly's headquarters, news of Zoe's improbable victory had spread like wildfire. A throng of reporters and onlookers greeted their arrival, eager to catch a glimpse of the human who had single-handedly defeated the Indomitable. Zoe, unfazed by the sudden attention, simply held up her hands for silence. Okay, first of all, I improvised. Second, yes, I did it without traditional weapons, unless you count a vending machine. And third," she paused for dramatic effect, "I have no idea what any of this means. I'm just as confused as you are." The crowd erupted in a mixture of laughter and applause. Behind her, Grunak muttered, "This is the worst day of my life." Zoe tossed him another gummy worm. "Cheer up, buddy," she said. "It's not every day you lose to a human in pajama pants."